Okay, hello. I am Katie Hosley. I am a senior developer advocate at BigCommerce. Welcome to this episode of our solution series, and it's all about app extensions, which are a really fun new feature on the BigCommerce platform. Today, our guest is a BigCommerce software engineer, or lead software engineer, Rob Alvarez. Welcome, Rob.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Yeah, we're excited. This is the first one we have where it's a BigCommerce person on, so this is really fun. Okay, so we'll just dive right in. But before you dive into what you're going to talk about, I was wondering if you could just tell us a little bit about app extensions.
Absolutely, yes. So app extensions are a relatively new feature where you can leverage the GraphQL API to create what we call app extensions. What that means really is that your app will be featured on specific parts of the control panel. And it'll provide a more native experience for merchants to dive right into your app without having to go into the marketplace and launch your app and lose all the context in what they were doing. So for this app extensions launch, we have just identified a few places in the control panel where you can do that, and I'll be showcasing that functionality. But that's the gist of it.
Awesome. Love it. Love a short and sweet. I love app extensions. I think there's something a lot of people are going to be really excited about because like you said, yeah, it keeps the context. It looks so native and it's a cool feature. So if you want to, I'll give you the floor and you can take it away.
Yeah, let's do that. I am going to start by sharing my screen and hopefully everything goes well from there. So all right, let me know when you can see my screen.
We're good.
Okay, good to go. Okay, so I have my sandbox store. This is the store that I will be using for the purposes of this quick demo. I already have a sample app running, so I'm just gonna go into apps real quick, and then my apps. I created one earlier. I don't wanna dive too deep into the whole app creation process, but if you are curious, you can always go to our BigCommerce. So if you just Google BigCommerce GraphQL app extensions, you'll be taken to this guide. This is specifically focused towards app extensions, but it does go a little bit before that. So it runs you through your setup of creating an app profile and a draft app and all of that cool stuff. So all of that is documented here for convenience. I already did most of this, so I don't want to bore you too much with that because that's not new. The new thing that is obviously the thing that we want to showcase is the app extensions part. The quick store that I will be using, I already have the app installed. Again, you can always refer to the docs if you have any issues installing your app, but I'm just going to dive right back into my apps section here. My apps, I already have a draft app installed, so I'm just going to go ahead and install that, and we'll go from there. Nothing really changes as part of the installation process, but we did include a little bit of a sample code in our sample app repo. So I'm just going to jump there real quick and show you what that is. So if you jump into the app extensions branch, and then you can navigate to the pages, API, auth file, you'll see that this is doing something different. It is creating an app extension right from the get-go when the app is installed. So this is just obviously for illustration purposes, but this is also a flow that you can leverage if you do want to have app extensions installed from the get-go. There's some sample code here, but anyway, what happens in the case of the sample app is if you go to the products page, you'll see that I'm going to hide the control panel real quick so we can see this better. You'll see that in this menu that already exists, a new action section will be added here that will showcase your app. So if you click that, you will see this panel, and I'll explain everything that's going on behind the scenes, but I just want to really see the UX real quick. You'll see a panel that your app actually has control over what this panel renders. This is just basic information to showcase what this can do, but really it's up to you to create whatever flow you desire. So that is one I guess, use case of the app extensions functionality. Running back into what happens behind the scenes is, if you go to the documentation, you'll see that the app extension model, I'm just going to go into the create app extension one real quick. So we are going to go into the input. You'll see that the input for creating an app extension is a context, a label, a model, and the URL. And for this, I'm going to be using Postman to showcase most of this. So if you want to follow along, we have a Postman collection right here, and you can download it, and then it'll just populate your Postman with all the needed stuff. But going back to the context, I'm just going to explain what these inputs are real quick. So the context is we have two UI contexts that basically relates to how the app extension is rendered on the control panel. We have a way to render panels, and we have a way to render links. So that is the UI context. You can choose one or the other for your app extension. The panel obviously opens the panel that we just saw, and the link just deep links back into your app without having users have to open it and then navigate within it and then choose what they want to do. So this lets them just jump right to the right place in your app. So that is really handy for use cases where you just want them to jump right in. The label is the text that is displayed in the menu item. So this would be the label. And the label does support different locales, so you can always just choose whatever language is associated with the user that is currently logged into the control panel. And the next one is the model. This one is pretty important. We support 3 models from the get-go. The first one is products, the second one is orders, and the third one is customers. So we will be focusing on products right now because that is the page that I already have here, but the others are very straightforward as well. They just refer to particular places in the control panel where your app extension would live. So if you were to choose orders, those would be populated in the orders table. I don't believe I currently have any orders in mind at the moment. Yep, no orders, but they will populate here and they will show in a very similar way to the product. Same thing with the customers. So I'm gonna just jump back into the products for the demo. And yeah, jumping back into the inputs that are required. The other one is the URL. This one is also pretty important because this will basically tell the platform how to launch this app extension. And I will elaborate that a little bit more. Okay, so I'm just going to jump right into Postman to show that we are going to start by querying the app extensions that already exist in your store, in this store, my store, for this example. As I was mentioning, when the installation process occurs, we install an app extension. So we're just going to use the GraphQL endpoint to query those and see what those look like. So I already have my store hash here plugged in and ready to go. The endpoint is just /GraphQL. Don't forget to include your token in the header section as well. So if you send this request, you'll see that the sample app registered an app extension here on the products model using a context of panel with the label view inside sample app, right? So that is exactly what we are seeing on the control panel right now. The label is what we used in the request, and the context is a panel. And the other thing that I want to showcase real quick is the URL part. So the URL that was used to create this app extension basically points to a specific part in your app. And what I mean by that is if we go into the sample app code again, you'll see that we have, I'm just going to close the API for now. You can see that we have a /product app extension /product ID page. So this is the URL that we use to register, and I'm gonna register another one to kind of like show that. But here in your application, you can control what gets rendered for each app extension. So if you have multiple app extensions registered on their different pages, so maybe you have one for products and maybe you have one for orders or whatever, you can obviously choose your own structure here on how you want to organize them. jumping back into how to register a new app extension, same endpoints, left GraphQL. The thing that will change is we're going to use a different query. So we're going to use the app extension mutation, create app extension input, and the variables that you need to provide are the context, the model, the URL, and your labels, right? So for this demo, I'm just going to change that to link to show how the links work. We're going to use the same model. So that'll make it so that it'll show up in the same products page. And here is the URL that I was talking about earlier. You can always change this if you have a different API structure in your application. So maybe you have like, I don't know, app extensions / I don't know, products, I don't know, something like that, if you want to organize them better. And you can always have, whatever suits your application best here, but I'm just going to go back to the way that the sample app is structured. So /product app extension, and this interpolation string here means that it'll get whatever entity's ID you are in. So if you're in the model products, you'll get a product ID here. And this will come in very handy because with this ID, you can go back to the API and query whatever product information you might need for your app extension, and you get to retain the context of whatever product was clicked, right? So that'll come in very handy. All right, so we're just going to send this query, and then we have created a new app extension. We get an ID back in case we need to delete it or update it further down the road, and then we just get back whatever we sent, right? So obviously, if we go back and get our app extensions again, you'll see that the other one is there. So we have our link and our panel. Cool. So I'm just gonna jump back into the control panel right now, close this and refresh the page. And then we should see two app extensions rendered here. The one that was installed when the application was installed, and then the new one that we just created. So if we click on the new one, since this is the context link, it'll take us right into the app. So as you can see in the URL here, it retains the context of my specific page that I registered when it was created. And it also gets the product ID that was clicked in. So this is the interpolation thing that was going on in Postman. And so this basically just makes the users go right into the app without them having to navigate or like do whatever. So now that they're in your page, you can have full control over the experience that you want to create. So that is what the link does. And yeah, you can have two of them registered at the same time. So the other one will continue to work. It'll retain its own, context for the panel. And depending on the use case that you have is, I guess, what you will be using. But yeah, that is basically the gist of the demo that I wanted to show. And again, if there's any other things that I might have missed, so for instance, there's other endpoints here for the app extensions functionality. So you can always refer to the docs to find all the other endpoints that I have closed over for the sake of the demo here. But yeah.
Yeah, there's too many endpoints to dive into all of them right now. No, this is great. This is like the exact amount of information I want people to be able to have to just see what they are and how you set them up. One thing I would love if you could touch on it just like briefly is the use of BigDesign when making app extensions.
I know
I think that's a requirement if I'm not wrong. Or maybe a loose requirement. I don't know if it's a strict requirement or not, but why you want people to use BigDesign for those components.
Yes, I'll jump to that real quick. Yes, that's a good point. Okay, so jumping back into my control panel, there's another thing that I wanted to showcase, which is the use of BigDesign. So as you can see, the product list leverages BigDesign heavily in order to build the UI, the components, the filtering, the searching, everything uses our collection of React components. So when you are building your app extension, you want to leverage BigDesign as well. This will basically make it so that the experience is cohesive. This example is very simple because it only has panels. But if you wanted to have a form in there, if you wanted to have, I don't know, a table with some other information, it is a requirement that you use BigDesign, because it'll help keep the it'll ensure that the experience is consistent. And again, if you just need a refresher on what BigDesign is, you can always go to Google and Google BigDesign. I already have it here. So developer.bigcommerce.com/BigDesign. And here's all the documentation that you need for buttons, for forms, for all of that. So definitely refer to this when building the UI for your app extensions. And yeah, this will ensure that we have coherent user experiences, which is always nice for people to have. And yeah, you can refer to the docs on how to install it, how to get started with BigDesign, how to install it, how to install the fonts and whatnot. So yeah.
Perfect. And I'll include all links that Rob referenced during this video in the description of the video. Actually, people should go back and watch your BigDesign talk from our on a couple years, not a couple years, a year ago.
Right.
Okay, this is great. Is there anything else you want to touch on, or are we good?
I think we're good. Yeah, the code should be there. Yeah, when going into especially the sample app code, just make sure that you jump into the app extensions branch to be able to see what is going on in this demo. But yeah, I think that's it.
Perfect. Okay, yeah, and I'll include the link to that repo in the description. Thank you so much, Rob. I think this is a great introduction to app extensions, and folks can actually download that Postman collection, which I think is so useful to just toy around. When I was first learning app extensions, I had to toy around with it on Postman to wrap my head around it. And once your head is wrapped around it, it's kind of like anything, where it's so simple and I think really, really useful. So I'm really glad you could come on today and really appreciate it. And we'll see everyone next time.
Yeah.
See ya.